X-ray, which is practically useless unless it broke his leg.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that, once you had an ACL, that was it, basically.
It was. I was very fortunate that I think I'd done the second rehab ever in this country on an ACL. There was no protocol laid down. I had to work it out up here. I had to try and work it out. And he actually done the other cruciate as well. So he'd done both, right and left knee. And he was the first player actually to return to the first division after 2 reconstructions.
Cool.
And that was, so I think George Burley was the first one in this country. That was David Dandy. And David Dandy actually brought that technique over from Canada. But if you look in the old medical textbooks, there was procedures to repair this a long, long while ago, in the 20s and the 30s.
Oh, really? Probably after the First World War, I suppose, because there's a lot of innovations happened after the First World War.
It was. So going back in years, a lot of the techniques that become maybe honed, more skillful, but were there to be used.
Mm-hmm.
You look at some of the great players that finished. Brian Clough, finished because of ACL, and now, with Paul, when we were doing his, it wasn't just. See, no, ACL doesn't get injured in isolation. There's other structures that are damaged. So if someone said, "Well, I had that same injury as that," he hasn't, because all injuries are different, So I think when Paul's was, when I was doing his rehab, I think one of the London players, another London player was getting, he'd flown over to America, and I think they were using an Achilles tendon from a deceased man to repair it. And I think at that time, I think one of the newspapers was sort of plotting his progress against Paul Gascoigne's progress. And Paul had a horrific injury. And without doubt, I had the angel sitting on my shoulder when I was doing his rehab, because he was, he worked hard. He was a great fella. I had Dave Butler to help me. I mean, Dave, who was my assistant, he was great doing field work, so out on the field. And I set all these programs up and done the hydrotherapy.
Imagine the pressure was on you. Imagine the pressure was on you because he's moved to Lazio, in pending.
Well, if you look at Spurs' financial position then, they could have been really in the deep mire. So they were relying on that money. And
absolutely.
So the pressure was on me. And I think after, it was an unbelievable time. The stress placed on you. And I couldn't go anywhere without comments, if I went into one of the London hospitals. But by the time I come out with a player, there was the press outside.
I mean, was it Princess Grace Hospital?
Yeah, Princess Grace.
I seem to remember, or I think I can't remember if I remember it or read about it. And there was like you on the steps there, and there was like hundreds and hundreds of cameras. What was that like?
Oh, it's a nightmare. I can't move too quick, but that day, see, we'd won the cup, hadn't we?
Yeah.
So they're all in the bus going around London, grading the cup. I'm stuck in the operating theatre with Paul, because that's where I should be, with him, make sure he's okay. And when the operation was finished, I was sitting there having a cup of tea, and the boss of the hospital, the director, said, "You better go outside, John, or get someone from the club." So of course I ring White Hart Lane to get a spokesman. And the telephone's just going at White Hart Lane. No one's there. They're all enjoying themselves. So I sat there. I was in my blue, the old gown, and I'm writing the statement out for the press. And I go out there, and I crap myself when I stand on that steps, and I do the television, all the television cameras from all over Italy, all over the place, and the media. There was hundreds and hundreds out there. And then I thought, I've got to get home. And I tried to get away. And So I'm running down the road with a limp, and they're chasing me, and I say, "Look, lads, give me a start, please. give me a start."
I reckon there was only two stories at a time. It was either Princess Diana or it was Paul Gascoigne.
Yeah, and I got home because it was my wedding anniversary as well. And I'm sitting there having a drink, and the 9 o'clock news comes on, and there I am on the steps. And I thought, what are you doing? What are you doing up there? I did. And Terry Venables phoned me. He said, "You've done well there, John. You've done well." I said, "Cheers, Terry." And then they'd been around London enjoying themselves, and I had a lot. But at the end of the day, I'd done the right thing for Paul, the club, and myself, because I would have never forgiven myself if I wasn't with him.
Yeah, I mean, indirectly, you might have saved the club.
Hey, that could have happened. I don't know, but if you look back, it
was a precarious time.
It was a precarious time, and that saved them. That saved their bacon. He did save their bacon, and but Lee, that could have happened. I don't know. His transfer could have saved the club. It could have, but that's never ever been said.
No,
I think there's a little bit.
I think a lot of people know it. Did you see the Venables documentary recently?
No,
that was on TV. It's well worth a watch. But imagine he was a top fella to work alongside. Was he very much in tune with the players and with the staff there?
He was a nice man. I'm very lucky because I had two great managers. David Pleat, who to me should have been England manager because his knowledge was incredible, and Terry Venables, who was England manager. And the only thing I still feel a little bit sad about, not angry, sad, but I would have loved to have done an England game. Just one. And I think I showed Terry that I was very loyal to Tottenham and the players and give 100%. And I would have maybe liked to have been invited to do maybe a game, because Dave Butler went with him. And I'm not sour, but I know that if David Pleat become England manager, I think I would have been invited to become one of the England staff. I'd have been happy with one game. It's just something that I always. I've done a cup final. I've done 2 cup finals. I've done over 1,000 league games, and to top it up, one England game, I'd have been delighted. But I had the ability. Now, whether people up there thought it doesn't look good with a England visit.
Sheridan sounds Irish, so we can't have him.
Yeah, I've got Irish. My grandparents were Irish, which I'm proud of.
Yeah, absolutely.
But maybe they felt that a physio running on the pitch for England with a limp wasn't the done thing.
You never. But in your career, that didn't hold you back, and you didn't. Surely you didn't have any. Did you have any bad reactions at all on if you ever had to run on any grounds? Was there any place that you went to and you thought maybe you'd been there once before and had a bad reaction? You probably sat on the bench thinking, I just hope I don't there's no injuries today, because I'd rather stay on the bench than have to run out onto the pitch.
Steve, I was scared stiff when I first started running on the pitch in league games. At Luton, I never went on for the first 6 games, so I got used to it. But look, race. If you got a problem, it's there for you. Get abused, and I got abused. I got abused. It's the same as the black players got abused sometimes. But I got abused, and it did hurt me early on. It does hurt you, but I remember running on at Man United once, and it was a muddy night, and I'd player down in one goal, player down in the other, and I treated the player here, and I looked up, and my other player was still down in the other box. Now, usually the opposing physio would go on. Now, I had to run that evening along the whole length of Old Trafford towards the Stretford end.
Yeah.
To give him me almighty stick. Now, the only way you can react to that is not to be given the V sign and that. I used to doff my cap. So I never got upset in the end. I accepted it because I was privileged to be able to do it.
You,
I always thought I was.
Go on, carry on. Sorry.
I thought I was being a bit of an ambassador for people with a disability.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you probably were working with, you know, if what I've heard is to be believed, but you're probably working with one of the better managers to be under at that time, because from what I heard, I've had been in like you know, conferences or whatever, presentations with Brian Steen in the past, and he spoke about when he first came to Luton, and you know, and some of the experiences that he had in the changing room, and how David Pleat, you know, basically just made sure that it wasn't an issue, and that everyone had to understand that these, you know, that you're all players in the same team and you have to get on, basically. And so, you know, I feel if there's anyone that's going to be there and fight your corner and show the support that you probably would have wanted and needed, it would probably have been David Pleat at that time.
Absolutely. David would always fight your corner. He fought for the players as well. I always fought the corner for the players. You know, I any racial thing I just couldn't accept at all. And a couple of times in my early days, I nearly got into fights with supporters. Until I was told that I must never get involved with supporters. That's how I felt. But as I got on, I've become hardened to the crowd. You know, I was very lucky because I had Luton crowd, then I had Tottenham crowd, and the Tottenham crowd, they supported me. So going away from home, they would cheer me, you know, and the Luton crowd would cheer me. So I had the Tottenham supporters, but now and again, I mean, once people got used to me seeing me running on the field, there wasn't a problem. You'd get the odd comment, but in the end, it just sort of was like water off a duck's back. You get used to it.
Crowds can be Jekyll and Hyde as well, can't they? One minute they're just incredibly cruel because of something they've seen or heard, and other times they can be unbelievably spontaneously witty as well.
Oh, absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't. That's what I used to do. I just used to doff my hat, you know, and bow to the crowd, because what can they do?
Yeah.
You know, they give you a bit of stick, but in the end, it's banter, isn't it? It's enjoyable because you're doing something there that you love doing, and even if you're getting a bit of stick from the wheelchair section, which you did sometimes, you know, you'd get a bit of stick from the wheelchair section, and you think, well, look, I'm an ambassador here for you. I'm holding this top job here, you know, and it shows that, you know, these people, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. You know, so it was good. It was a great experience. Great experience. But,
I don't know if there's. I mean, tell me if this is something that's in your book, and you know to defer to that really. But in your career, has there been times where you've been at a club where you feel that you're on the border of walking away because you've got no faith in what they're doing?
Well, I mean, I left when I left Spurs. I did leave Spurs of my own vocation. They wanted to keep me. They tried to keep me. Ozzy Ardiles, when he became manager, he bent over backwards to try and get me back. But by then, I think I fell out of love with professional football. At that period of time, I think I'd gone through so much. I'd spent all that time getting Paul Gascoigne fit,